When it comes to kind of what differentiates schools, from being like a good school, a bad school, meeting the students' needs or not meeting the students' needs, what do you think is like the main thing that can differentiate? Like, do you think it's like a resource game? Like, if a school has the funding for the resources it needs, then that kind of is what differentiates it. Is it a curriculum thing? If it's teaching what it needs to? Like, what do you think it is that kind of really differentiates where we see some schools overperforming and some drastically underperforming?
Well, resources definitely matter. Resources definitely matter. But, solving the resource game is a much more political situation. I'm sure you're in Indiana, Michigan, New York, every place. It's a political situation. So the resource game is not easily solved, not by you and me. We are educators. We can't solve that. Another thing is that the curriculum, remember the traditional curriculum is really controlled by the state through standardized testing by each state. And again, that's a political game by a lot of people. So many schools, even though teachers try, school leaders try, they cannot really make drastic changes. So I think a good school, a bad school has to do with how much do you enable the students to create their own education? How much can you help support students to solve authentic, meaningful, real problems? How much do you care about each student? No matter where you are, what resources you have, do you have enough adults who care about? I don't know, Brandon, if you think about your own school, how often are you talked to by an adult in a school and really in a human, caring way? How often does a student get treated as a human being, not a student? Do you feel when you go to school, do they really care about me? Or am I just simple number, to drive to go to school? I think the humanity part of education matters. How often do schools watch students as if they're bad actors? You go to school, some has, like screen doors, when you go through like airports, right? I mean, you have a lot of, you check their bags, you take their phones away. I think schools just needs to become a much more human. So if a school, whether you have resource or a lot of resource, do you treat students as human children? Or do you always treat students as students? Students is a category, but every student is actually a human being with unique talents, with unique interests, with unique family background, with unique history. When they come, they are a full grown human being seeking opportunities to become better.
So then I'm curious when, the conversation comes to public school, private school, do you think that that distinction is important at all? Do you think one kind of harms the other, or do you think either school could kind of do this thing you're talking about? It's more so focusing on that.
You know, I don't really want to jump into that conversation because no matter what we say about it, it doesn't really matter. They will exist, and there's a lot of political fights in that. Charter schools, private school, magnet school. You have all sorts of schools, but my overall view is this: we need schools that would help us grow our children to thrive in the age of AI. And those schools, maybe private schools, maybe charter schools, maybe public schools, because as you know, with any category, you have bad schools, you have good schools. And there are all kinds of reasons driving those agenda. I know many people say, okay, public schools are resistant to changes. Therefore, we need to use charter schools to wake them up a little bit. And some others might argue, well, charter schools are not really good. They're just making money off the schools. So there are always kind of arguments. But I think the important thing is for all educators, everybody who is working with children, to help each child grow.
I completely agree with you. The last question I have is just the other one that always comes up when the education conversation is had. Teachers and teacher pay. Do you think that that's also a conversation that needs to be had, or kind of like last topic? Do you think that serves more as a distraction, and it's these other things right now that need focused on?
Well, I would argue teachers need to be paid well. You know, there's no question about that. However, the game again, I call it a game because it's if you look across the country, some states pay teachers better than other states. Some schools pay teachers better and than others. You know, I think teachers do a very hard job, and teachers are some of the most hardworking and underpaid individuals in this country. And so I think teachers should be paid more. However, that's a very again political game in school boards, in your state legislators, in different places. And so we as education people, we can advocate for better pay, we can advocate for better conditions, but at the same time we need to understand, no matter what, when you have children passing through your doors every day, we have millions of kids are in our teachers' classrooms. We hope all our teachers will actually do their job and help everybody grow. Kept using the word grow to become capable, caring human beings.
I completely agree with you there. So before I let you go, if you have like you said you had your upcoming book, if you have any other books you want to shout out, like a website, anything like that.
Oh yeah, I've written over 40 books, over nearly 200 articles. If anyone cares, they can visit my website is http, Zhao Learning, ZHAO learning.com.
Awesome. So thank you again. I think it was a really insightful conversation, and we'd love to have you back on again sometime, my friend.
All right, thanks Brandon. Take care.
Enjoy the rest of your day.